All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you for taking the time to join us today for our webinar here about our new release. 4.11.14.3290 is the latest version, and you can check that in your Help About screen. And if you're not sure that you have the latest version, be sure to contact us. We can get you more information about that. And as we get started here, maybe somebody can just send me a quick chat message. Let me know that you can hear me all right and you can see my screen okay. Perfect. Looks great. And yeah, just a reminder, you can use that chat window to ask a question as we go through it. We may not be able to answer them directly in the webinar, but if nothing else, we also can follow up with you after the fact. So feel free to use that chat window for that. So several different things that I just wanted to show you, kind of miscellaneous throughout different portions of the software that I wanted to point out. Starting over here on the Project tab, and specifically in the Quick Check area. And this is just a good reminder for those of you who maybe haven't made use of the Quick Check tab. This is a good feature to help improve the quality of the estimates that you're doing with really little effort on your side. It just takes a little bit of upfront time to customize and set it up the way that you want. But then as you work on your jobs, you can come to this tab, and on the one hand, on the general information side, you can run that report and just get some statistics and information about your job that may just, as you just do a quick glance over it, might bring some things to attention that you need to address. The new feature over here in the general information side that we've added is we've broken down the sheathing types. So before we just sort of had a broad reaching square footage that covered all of the areas or all the walls where that sheathing was being used. But now we've also given you the breakdown of what parts were in the garage, what's in exterior, what's in warm, or other wall types that you may have sheathing in. So just been more explicit to that. The other side is related to potential errors. So if you run that side, it would give you information about things that might be wrong in your project. And so this is not new features, but just want to remind you that it's probably worth your time, even though I know everybody's short on time these days with how busy things are, but it can be worth your time to help catch those oversights that we all do from time to time. And you can customize this to specifically the things you want to see by using the settings button. But anyways, just want to draw your attention to in the general area, this is a new feature that we've added in to improve the quick check portion. On the note of imports and exports, we've given some more flexibility that was had before in the area of notes. If you're trying to share notes that you've created across different templates or in different projects, you can use the export note button. That's been there before, but we've improved the control over that. So now you actually can pick which notes that you would want to export and import. So just more control in that area. In a similar fashion, oops, I'm going to cancel that. In a similar fashion, over in the Profile tab, on the Wall Assemblies tab, a similar concept where you can choose to export now, but now instead of just the bulk of everything going, you have control and be able to check and uncheck which boxes that you would want to actually export. So you have control of those wall assemblies. Also in the Profile tab, we've introduced the idea of for framing layouts. We had some feedback from some people, some users, that they have times or occasions where they need to be able to create a framing layout that doesn't include the title bar. Just need a bland framing layout of something that they were working on. So in the General tab, under Framing Layout Styles, we've now given you the ability to do that if you have that particular need. I'm going to click the plus button to create a new framing layout style. And I'm going to call this no title bar, no margins. And now down here in this section for the options, there's this whole section now for the title bar area. And if I uncheck it, then all those gray out and go away, because essentially we're saying we don't want any title bar at all. Down under margins, we're going to also, for me, you don't have to do this, but I'm going to set my margins to 0. And I'm going to set my page size to be 24 by 36. I'll click OK. And now to make use of that, I'm going to come over here to my Plan tab, and I'll just create a quick framing layout here of this page in general. So I'll just kind of do a broad sweeping view here. Call this new layout. Now it's going to show up with my standard framing layout view, which was with the title bar and everything. But now if I close, then I'm going to come over here and change my layout style for my framing layouts. And instead, I'm going to pick the new style I just created, which was no title bar, no margins. And I can view this one again. And now I have just that. I have my materials list since there was materials on the page, but that's been set out across the entire page now, no title bar. So if you have that need, that's been made available for you to use there. So I'm going to close that window and come back here. So now going on to over to the, while we're in the profile, just to finish up, not a new feature, but here in the labeling tab, something that we've released previously was the ability for you to follow member orientation, and we've made a change or an improvement to that. So I'm going to turn that on, and basically what that means is when I check that box on, any of the labels that are on segment lines or things like that, now the label will follow the orientation of that line. So as it moves to be more vertical on the page, the label is going to still follow that same direction. And the label always points to the right-hand side as long as it's basically angled that direction or it's straight up and down. But what was found was that as you tipped past, just past being just over the top of being straight up and down, the label would flip before, but most people didn't want that. They still wanted it to be pointed over to the right since it's really almost vertical anyways. So we've increased that tolerance so that you have to get a little bit further over to off center before it actually flips over to the other direction. So just a minor change and update to that behavior that we had introduced there. Callout lines. We've introduced the ability for you to have an arrowhead on the end of your callout line. So if I wanted to draw a callout line on this page and point at this corner right here, so here's my standard callout line that I get, but if I right click now I can choose to add arrows on both or one of the ends of the line. So I'll pick that and now I've got that arrow in that location. I can also choose to make the color red if I want, so now I've got what I have here. In addition, if you use that on a regular basis, you can right click, choose Save as Preset. And so I'll call this my red arrow. And since I've created this preset now, you'll see up here in my callout lines area, I've got this little triangle here indicating that I have more presets to use. So I'll right click instead of left clicking, and I can pick that preset to draw my red arrow in place. In addition to that, if you just find that you want your callout line to be like that all the time, this is not a new feature, but just to remind you what is possible, I can set this preset of red arrow to be my default behavior. The way you do that is you would come back to the profile and you would go to the presets, and at that location then you would find where that callout is located, the annotation callout tool. And there's my red arrow preset. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to choose Set Default. So now, instead of getting the standard black callout line behavior, if I come to Plan and I just left click on the icon, I'm not choosing the preset, I'm just left clicking on the callout line, I'm going to get that preset behavior. So you could set things up that way. In addition, that actually is true for all types of presets, whether it's using the clouding tool, segment lines, floor containers, any of that, you can actually change the standard default behavior. Let's change over here to the upper floor framing plan and talk about edges. So one of the changes, some of you may have experienced that edges were becoming very difficult to select if you didn't have a product selected. So like if you were in this condition and you were trying to select this line right here, it was very difficult in the last version. We've made a change. That should be a whole lot easier now, back to the behavior that you had experienced previously, so much easier to use. In addition to that, though, we've really done a fair amount of work in the edges area to make them cleaned up and look more sharp and professional. So before the corners weren't as clean cut, but now you'll notice that we have really nice square boxed corners, and then they also don't overlap each other. So if I came to to this one here, and I'm going to set this to be 2 plies. So since this is the thicker member, the wider member, it's going to take precedence and go to the corner. So in the same regard, if I was to set this to 3 plies, so it's the wider or thicker member, so now it takes precedence and goes to the corner. But again, you get that nice boxed squared look. In addition, for those of you who have like to break up your rim, maybe you have different conditions where one's a single ply and one's a double ply along with the straight edge. If I right click on this edge right now and choose to add a node so I can break it up. So now I have, you know, a single and a double, and previously there was some different behavior where this rim didn't look quite right. It wasn't oriented correctly and it just looked strange. But now again, with the work that we've done, we've cleaned that up so that's really easy to use. And as we break things out and bend it this way, it still accommodates that. And if you get far enough out, you'll get to some beveling behavior to get the lengths that you would need. So lots of changes and small tweaks and updates to give you just a nice clean look around the edges of your containers. Over in the pages list, just by way of mention, if you've made use of folders before, and maybe if you had put a lot of pages in there and had them collapsed and scrolling around on the pages list, you may have experienced some funny bouncing around behavior. Just another correction and a fix that we've put in for that. So that should feel a whole lot better now as you work through those. And also, just by way of mention, if you are making use of the Forte online, the Forte calcing software, you can choose to import the files over on that in the web to bring those in. And then we'll be looking at further the ability to export a file directly to the Forte online version. And then the final thing that I wanted to bring to your attention that some of you may have already encountered already as you've made use of this new version is that we've created a new method or a new way for you to start a project. So I'm going to come over here into this particular file and I'm going to close the project. And so for many of you who are veteran users of the software, you know that when you start a project, you do a certain level of file management. You will create a folder and put your files and store those in that particular project folder and just organize them in a certain way. So we've introduced a new way, though, that automates some of that. The old method is still available for those of you who would still want to use it that way. But for those who want to try something new or maybe find that other way a little bit confusing, we've introduced a new method. So if you double click on the software, what you'll find is you're going to open to this Start a Project window. I'm going to open that Start Project window, and you'll see this. So what you can do if you're ready to start a new job is just give your project a name. So let's call this 0078 King House. So that could be, you know, the project name, project number, whatever. But this is what's going to be used to give your project a name. Then where is this going to be saved? You would pick a location. My default location is in my Documents Pre-Built Jobs folder. So where I might choose to store all of my jobs, but you can use the ... to browse to wherever you would want to your preferred location, and it's going to remember that in the future as you work on more jobs. Template file, so the template file that you want to use to start this project, if you have one, you just browse to wherever that is using the ... Again, mine is located here, Documents Pre-Built Template. And so it's just going to know to use that in the future, or in any case, you can always browse to which one you would want if you have several of them. So a couple of these already kind of populated for you, or just customize them to what you are doing on an ongoing basis. And then finally, you can just select your plan images. So the pages that you would get, the PDF, the scans, whatever they are. So I'll click the Browse button. I'm going to come to my desktop, go to my training plan 1 that I have. Training plan 2, and so here are my pages. I'm going to select those. So again, this will be the PDF, the scans, the TIFFs, the PNGs, whatever it is that you were given for your project. You just select those, click Open. And so now I've entered the information for this project. So pretty straightforward. just kind of walk through the steps. And now we'll click the Start Project button. And it's going to take just a minute, but what it's going to do is it's going to go through and create all that other stuff for you. So that job folder, it's going to create, it's going to copy that template file over, rename it. It's going to pull in those plan images, as you'll see here in just a second, and populate those things around where they belong. So we'll let it finish up. Okay, so now it opened up, and now you can see here as we come to the Plan tab, it has all those pages loaded in correctly. If I come back over here to the Project and General tab, that project name that I gave it has been populated in here to this location. And then if I was to pull up a folder, a browsing folder, I'm just going to go to my desktop, or sorry, I'm going to go to my Documents folder where I had said I wanted to store it. Documents, Pre-Built Jobs. And now it's created for me that 0078 King House folder, that project folder. If I open it up, inside of it is the template for this job that's been renamed as 0078 King House because that's the name of the project I gave it. And then here are all the associated pages. So the whole Start project, it has now been given a way for you to automate those steps and just be faster at it and less confusing in that. Again, like I said before, the old method still works just as well and just as easy. So if that's more comfortable to you because that's what you've been doing forever, you can continue that way. But wanted to make you guys aware that this other alternate method is available that you can start using. So that was the set of features that we've released. Again, the latest version of that is 4.11.14.3290. And thanks again for joining us today, and hope that you have a good afternoon. Have a good afternoon. Talk to you later.